Hi all, this is a video with two examples of taking a function and converting it to vertex form. And remember, one of the skills that will help is the algebra skill completing the square. So let's walk through that. First thing you need to remember is if this lead coefficient is not a 1, then you're going to want to factor it out from your entire function. So if I pull out a 3, then I'm left with t squared minus 4/3 t plus 7/3. Now again, you can determine what these values are by taking each term. If you're going to factor out a 3, then take each term, 1, 2, 3, and divide each of them by what you factor out, which in this case is 3. Now I'm going to rewrite this as 3 times the quantity t squared minus 4/3 t, and then I'm going to draw my two blanks as we've discussed in class and tack on my plus 7/3 on the end. Notice that all of that remains inside the parentheses, and we'll have to redistribute this 3 later. So now for what goes here and here. Remember, we need to take half of b, here's b, divide it by 2 or cut it in half, so half of b, which is negative 4/6, and square it. And that value is going to go here and here. Now we can simplify negative 4/6 and rewrite it as negative 2/3, and when you square a fraction, you square the numerator and you square the denominator. So this is going to be plus 4/9 minus, so plus 4/9 minus 4/9. Now we haven't changed the value of this, we're still equal because we added and subtracted the same number, it just looks different. So we've manipulated so that these first 3 terms are the square of a binomial, and we can combine these 2 terms as well. When we clean this up, we end up with 3 times, I'm going to add a parenthesis, t, it's always going to be minus half of b, so t minus 2/3 quantity squared. And then I need to combine negative 4/9 and 7/3. So you have the skills, as we've worked through them in class, you have the skills of finding a common denominator. But to save time here, I'm just going to take negative 4/9, add 7/3 in my calculator. I get 1.8 repeating, and I can hit math fraction to convert, and I see that it's plus 17/9. So we're not quite in vertex form yet. The last thing that we need to do is distribute this 3, and we are left with 3 times the quantity t minus 2/3 quantity squared plus 17/3. Now plus 17/3 because when you distribute this 3, you get a 3 in your numerator, you had a 9 in your denominator, and 3/9 is 1/3. Remember that you cannot, I'm going to put a star here, you cannot move this 3 inside of the parentheses because the t minus 2/3 has not been squared. It's, I guess, protected, we might say, by that exponent. And so here's your vertex form. That means that if I was going to sketch this thing, the vertex would be in quadrant 1 because I would go 2/3 to the right and 17/3 up. I'm going to have to ignore my scale, but there's my vertex, and because my lead, my a value is 3, we are concave up, and so there's our function. Now this thing, I'd like to note, it does not have any real zeros. It never intersects the x-axis. It has no real zeros. You can check, I would encourage you to check by plotting this function and plotting the original function on the graphing calculator. Maybe call this y2 and call this y1 and make sure that they match, and they will. Next example, we've been asked to convert to vertex form, but right now I have this thing in factored form. And so the first thing I'm going to do is expand in order to put it into standard form. So I get 2s squared, first times first, outside minus 3s plus 10s is plus 7s minus 15. Again, that's first, outside, inside, last. Now, if I want to put this into vertex form, we will factor out a 2 as we did in the previous example. I am going to say equals because what we're about to do is equal. And we are left with s squared plus 7 over 2s minus 15 over 2 initially. I'll rewrite 2 times s squared plus 7 over 2s blank blank minus 15 over 2. Now, I need to take half of b, again, half of b, square it, add it, and subtract it. So half of b is 7 over 4. Squared is 49 over 16. So add, you always add first, subtract next. And now we will rewrite this as, because we are manipulating that again very purposely, because it's going to be it's going to be a binomial squared. We'll combine these like terms, and when we do, we're left with 2 times s plus half of b, quantity squared, minus 169 over 16. Again, I know by now that you know, because I've tested you on it, how to find a common denominator. I would multiply this by 8 over 8, and I'd add them together. I just punched this in to save myself a little more time, and I came up with that. We'll redistribute our 2, and we're left with 2 times the quantity s plus 7 over 4 quantity squared, minus 169 over 8. And the reason my denominator has been converted to an 8 is because this 2 got distributed, and 2 over 16 reduces to 1 over 8. Again, this 2 over here is locked out. It cannot be distributed into those parentheses because of this exponent. And so there's your vertex form. That's all I've got.